Welcome to Script Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we're here for the 12th in about a 34-part series as we journey chapter by chapter through Fairy Tale. There we go. Fairy Tale by Stephen King. I know it's backwards, but it's different. You get the lettering that way. Fairy Tale by Stephen King. And just real quick at the beginning of things, I'm going to be doing what I call the 9 days of Halloween, a video on some type of horror literature every day leading up to Halloween. So here we have Stephen King's Fairy Tale, not really a horror novel, but it's Stephen King, so we will count it. Yesterday I did The Conqueror Worm by Edgar Allan Poe. It's a poem. It was a poem discussion. Tomorrow, I think, is The Telltale Heart. I will be doing a short story discussion on The Telltale Heart. And then, obviously, Wednesday, we will be back with Fairy Tale. Friday, we will have an opening paragraph discussion for, hold on. One moment. Mask of the Red Death. That's right. I can never remember the title to that short story, but we will be back with that Thursday. I don't know what I'm doing yet. Surprise. It will be a surprise to me as well. Saturday and Sunday, don't know what I'm doing. Monday, we'll be back with this. And is that Halloween? I think Monday is Halloween. So we've just got a few days to figure out here. But I hope to have you back for all of those videos as well. But we're going to get into the comments first. There's just one comment to go over. And then we're going to get into So What Happened, then Lit Crit, and finally the sort of writer's discussion for this, the 12th chapter in Fairy Tale. Patricia chimes in and says she can't wait for the review. Now, personally, so as a creator, one of the big risks that we take is knowing what content to make. And I am of the opinion that these long-form discussions and long-form playlists, first off, they absolutely murder my channel. They are destruction, because the YouTube algorithm goes off of how many views you get when a video goes up and interaction, engagement, things like that. So by the time you get to the 4th and 5th video in a series, basically no one is left. And I don't care. Also, hey, no one watches poetry discussions. I don't care. And I don't mean this to drag Patricia. I know exactly what she's saying. What I'm getting around to is that, yeah, I probably wouldn't read chapter by chapter with someone either, but the fun thing is going to be getting to that review. For me, the fun thing is going to be getting to that review with all of these videos already in tow. And I've got some new stuff figured out that I think I'm going to try at the end of the series, which could be some fun or at least interesting on a larger scale. So moving into the So What Happened portion of this chapter, we open with Charlie at gunpoint. He's still got a gun to his back from Christopher Pauley. We later learn the thief's name to be. His assailant asks him, what's down there? Down there as in, what's in the hole? Not the box, but the hole. What's in the hole? Much different game. What's in the hole? And Charlie says it's pumping machinery, not like newborn baby, getting the milk pumping machinery, but pumping machinery as in, otherwise the whole thing would flood. That's where we're at. The laughing man calls BS and makes Charlie hand over his gun. The laughing man then Chris wants to be shown the safe, and Charlie stalls while opening the safe. And as he's trying to figure out where he's at, what he's going to do, what's the plan, because he knows if he doesn't open the safe, he's getting killed. If he opens the safe, he's getting killed. So as he's taking he builds up the amount of gold that is in the safe. Must be $1 million. Must be $1 million. And as he is retrieving the bucket of gold from the safe, he spills it. He spills it as a distraction and then jumps into the closet and gets shot at. Then he leaps out on top of Chris, and Charlie breaks his wrist and grabs the gun. Then we get a little bit of rope-a-dope here from Charlie, who says, "Look, I'm a bad man. There's a lot of bad things. Look, you've seen so far the heroic side of me. But there's a bad man roiling under the surface here. I did a lot of bad stuff with my friend Birdie. Did a lot of bad stuff, who I think we're probably going to run into again later, right? There's no way that Birdie just keeps getting brought up like this, but we'd never meet Birdie again. Did a lot of bad stuff. I'm a bad guy. I shouldn't have killed him. I shouldn't have killed him. And I didn't. I just broke his other wrist, broke his nose, walked him out into the woods, threw him over the fence, and that was that. Why give us the rope-a-dope, Stephen? Why do that? I understand you're building suspense, and I'm not levying this as such a criticism as to put it in the writer's portion of things, but I think that misdirection there, I thought we were getting into the real Stephen King. The dark story Stephen King. The Stephen King who puts pretty questionable stuff in books sometimes. That's what I thought we were getting to, but we never did. So he's going to return. He's going to return with some bad guys. So we'll get into the lit crit here. Just a little bit of discussion with this part. You let the bad guy go, the bad guy comes back with bad guys, right? Why wouldn't he? He knows where the gold's at. He knows where it is. He knows you know the combination now. Now he comes back with two other bad guys. Even if you're quickest on the draw, there's still two other bad guys there. I've got a 33% chance of being, even if there only one survives, being that guy. It's bad strategy. It's bad strategy, Charlie. I want to start now with a question. Why all of the emphasis on Rumpelstiltskin? He keeps referring to Chris as Rumpelstiltskin. Maybe I'm just not familiar enough with the Rumpelstiltskin story to really draw any comparison or parallel. But if I'm not mistaken, wasn't the latter half of the Rumpelstiltskin story Rumpelstiltskin coming back? I could be completely mistaken. Was never really into the fairy tale thing, was never really had those stories in my life. I don't know particularly, but I thought there was something about that to the Rumpelstiltskin story. Moving forward on 202, we get this quote. "Open the closet, kiddo." This comes to us from Chris. "And I opened the closet. The empty holster flapped against my thigh. Some gunslinger I turned out to be. The gun is never a gun." So, when Charlie emerges from the underworld, from the other place, from the new world, Chris is sitting there waiting for him, and he takes him at gunpoint and makes him give him his gun. This is a castration scene, more or less. The literary equivalent of that. He is unmanning Charlie. And this is an especially ironic scene for what is a coming-of-age / becoming a man story. We have here the budding Charlie coming into his own, becoming the man, growing up, having an inheritance. He's already got all of the makings of a man, with the fact that he is a very, and by man I don't mean like just male, I mean adult as well. He is a very dependable and responsible individual. So he's got all that stuff already because of the stuff he went through with his father and losing his mother. So here we have the next ascendance. What is the next ascendance? The next ascendance is not sustaining. Then you build the defense, and then you build the offense. Now, A gun can provide both of those functions. A gun only needs a holster, really, for defensive gunning. So the interesting thing to this is that when we're talking about a coming of age, we're talking about becoming a man, we're talking about growing up, being an adult. One of the first places that you are often taught to be an adult, one of the ways that is often used to preach adulthood, is through money. And in money, you use a defensive strategy first. A lot of people, you want to, once you start making more money than you need, you have to build a cushion for yourself. You build like a 3-month of expense cushion that you want to not lose value. So a lot of people, once they do this, they end up building it in precious metals like gold. So it's interesting. The defensive gun use is to hide the gun. The attacker doesn't know you have a gun. You have an advantage. If you, and I just mean on the periphery of it, right? The very defensive versus the very offensive. Obviously, you watch any of these videos of attackers and assailants, they're pulling a concealed gun. But once the attack starts, the gun is out. There's a YouTube channel called Active Self-Protection. You can look up, and there's all sorts of defensive gun uses. And it's often, you don't get to say when the attack starts when you're the defender, right? It is just the bad guy. The bad guy's always got the gun drawn first. So this idea of unmanning, disarming Charlie here, what that gun represented was him taking the next step into becoming an adult in the world versus the domestic adult that he had learned to become. He was the domestic adult, taking care of the bills, taking care of the cooking, taking care of getting himself up, getting himself washed, all of these things, into being the offensive, out in the world, attacking adult. That is what this new life, represented by the Bowditch estate, exhibits. And here he is, in his first venture out, losing the gun. Going to be losing, so the gun's never a gun, the gun is obviously a phallus, and then the pellets too, he was going to lose the balls. So, moving forward, also on 202, we have a very weird, I don't know, it almost makes me think, and maybe this should be in the writing portion of this, it almost makes me think that in the first draft of this novel, Charlie wasn't an athlete. Because we get this. When he is assessing the situation, Charlie is comparing his physicality to Chris Pauly's. Chris Pauly's a smaller guy. He says, I was a foot taller and had an athlete's build these days thanks to chores and bike riding, as opposed to having an athlete's build due to the years of being an athlete. Really, Stephen? So let me tell you a story, how fast this stuff goes. When I was in high school, my senior year, bench pressed 330, 335, something like that. 330 plus. Immediately out of high school, I took a job working overnights. Strange how this keeps coming up in my life, but working overnights, immediately out of high school. Remember, I graduated benching about 330 pounds. I had a friend who went on to play college football. After the winter break, so we're talking 7 months, he came back during his winter break, wanted to work out. I think that's when this was. It was not that long. It was maybe 7 months, maybe less. He came back, wanted to work out, came to his own old workout buddy. I had like the third, fourth highest bench press in my graduating class. He had the first. Who else was he going to go to? Came to me. We go to the gym. Remember, 7 months ago, I bench pressed 330. We get to the gym. I got 225 up once. Effectively, my new max was 225. 100 plus pounds gone in just 7-ish months of not being active and obviously working overnights, not living the most athletic life, not living the most healthy life, not living the life most conducive to weightlifting, things like that. But 7 months. This is an 18, 19-year-old guy, right? Same age range. 7 months of not being as active as I was, I lost 100 plus pounds on that bench press. So Charlie quit being an athlete and all of a sudden found himself in an athlete's body. I don't buy it. That's all I'll say there. Moving on, 204, we get a nice little phrase from Stephen King. And I say Stephen King because this is not from Charlie. And I say this is not from Charlie because we're assuming Charlie is an authentic 17-year-old man. What we have here, get off me, a labored, out-of-breath whisper coming from Charlie. And in his mind, Stephen King, not Charlie, replies, as if. As if. Go ahead and add as if to awesome sauce, Stephen, because it's just unrealistic dialogue. 210, and this is the last talking point on the Lit Crit portion of this. Not a whole lot. We had a lot of action here. And we had a lot of action here, but not a lot of things that really translate so much onto interpretation, things like that. On 210, we have the question coming to us from Charlie. While letting Chris go, threw him over the fence like an animal and let him scurry off into the woods. Would he tell someone else, a friend or a partner in crime? I didn't think Paulie had any partners or friends. Paulie is the Bowditch of criminals. No friends, no partners. But what did Bowditch do? Bowditch found one, didn't he? Bowditch went ahead and discovered Charlie. Let him in. Maybe that will come back to haunt Charlie. Moving on to the writer's portion of this video on 200. I'm going to go into a rant. And I'm going to go into a rant for probably the 1000th time on this channel. A rant that won me absolutely zero friends in grad school. I was the Bowditch of grad school. But I promise you, if you're a writer and you are, this is what we do. We scurry about to get any of the insight or advice we can from anywhere at all. Even if it's bad advice. Maybe I'm giving bad advice, but I don't think so. On 200 here, we have Charlie telling us about Chris Pauly not being distracted. He says of Chris Pauly, quote, he had his eyes on the prize, end quote. Now, obviously, that's a cliche. Cliches have their use, but not in creative writing. Cliches have their use in dialogue, not on the page. Dialogue between people, because it's an easy way to describe an idea. It's an easy way. It is a shortcut to getting a point across. But in your writing, it is murder. And here's why. What you're doing when you put a cliche on the page, A, it's lazy, right? Stephen King knows this. It's lazy. B, what you're doing when you put that on the page is you are robbing your character of a moment to use his or her authentic voice. Once that character is ridden of the opportunity, it is not returned. I didn't know. The man I was thinking of as Rumpelstiltskin didn't really care. He had his eyes on the prize. If, for example, you just cut that phrase out completely, you are cutting. So here's the two paragraphs that surround it. Even such feeble invention as I'd managed so far had failed me. So I said I didn't know, and the man I was thinking of as Rumpelstiltskin didn't really care. He had his eyes on the prize. Never mind. Right now, let's go check out the old guy's safe. This comes to us from Chris. Think how much more dynamic that exchange is without the cliche muddying it up. Even such feeble invention as I had managed so far had failed me. So I said I didn't know, and the man I was thinking of as Rumpelstiltskin didn't really care. Never mind. Right now, let's go to the old guy's safe. You put the cliche in there to tell us, and you went ahead and showed us on both sides of it anyway. Not only is it cliche, not only does it rob us of the way that Charlie would describe this had he not been so quick to cliche, but it removes the dynamism of that portion of the writing. Because if we don't have that cliche where Charlie is explaining Chris to us, Chris just gets to slap us in the face with his dialogue. Never mind. And that is so much more impactful. So much more impactful. Still on 200. And this is a good one. The entire time Chris is talking to us, we keep getting this ha-ha in the dialogue. Let's get to the safe. Ha-ha. Don't turn around. Ha-ha. And it's irritating. But it's a character quirk. It's irritating on purpose. But here, now you can buckle up again. Nice belt. Ha-ha. That is coming to us from Chris. Charlie tells us parenthetically, which is something Stephen King used to great effect in The Shining. Parentheses, I think, were the mother's way of thinking, and Jack's way of thinking was in italics. I had never seen that before. I loved that move from King. But here, parenthetically, we get from Charlie, Chris tells us, now you can buckle up again. Nice belt. Ha ha. And Charlie says, at this point, I'm going to stop most of the ha ha crap. Because he said it all the time as a kind of verbal punctuation. Just let me add that it was extremely Rumpelstiltskinish, which is to say creepy. That's great. These little insights like this, are the reason you really pick first-person narrators. Ways of communicating directly with the reader in this way to editorialize something like because this had to be irritating to Stephen King to write as well, the ha-has. To be present enough to use your narrator to tell your reader, look, Stephen King here, I'm not putting this in there anymore. Done with it, tired of it. I like that. And the final point I have to make is on 201 here. There's the police again. Every episode, I swear. 201, we get this. This comes to us from Charlie. We climbed the back porch steps. I unlocked the door and we went into the kitchen. I remember thinking of all the times I'd been in here, never suspecting how soon I'd be entering it for the last time, because he was going to kill me. Okay, it's not terrible. Here's what it is. It's rushed. You've spent 200 pages getting us to some type of conflict. You spent 170-ish pages showing us the world for which the book is written. 170 pages, we don't have the reason the novel's written. 200 pages, we don't have conflict. And all of a sudden, once we've got conflict, once we've got tension, once we've got all of these things obviously running through Charlie's mind, you want to just gloss over them. That's weird. And it's not very Stephen King-esque. Normally, with a writer as experienced as Stephen King, and here I think I have some admiration for Stephen King, obviously. I think he got lazy in writing this book. We climbed the back porch steps and I unlocked the door, thinking of the very first time that I had walked into that kitchen, thinking of all the times that I had made Mr. Bowditch pancakes, thinking of all the times that Radar had sat next to me and I'd slipped her some, and you can just give us these flashbacks. You don't even have to editorialize it like that. I remembered and give us a scene. Instead, you're just giving us a recap. Never suspecting that I'd be entering it for the last time, because he was going to kill me. I remembered all the times. I remembered giving the first time I'd entered. I remembered giving Mr. Bowditch pancakes for the first time. Pop! I could hear it now, the gunshot in the back of my brain. Give us these scenes. All of a sudden, we've got 170 pages that could be in 30 pages. And then we've got this scene here that could take legitimately 50 pages, but with the way Stephen King goes through things. I'm not saying that to disparage. I'm just saying he's not exactly Hemingway in being precise with words, right? He wastes some words on the page. He indulges in the words. Maybe that's a better way to say it. He indulges in the dialogue. He indulges in the characters' vicissitudes. But he doesn't here. Once we've got some actual meat, once we've got some actual fear coursing through Charlie, we just get these little things summarized. Again, not to belabor the point, but this is sort of where we have a difference between what is known as literary fiction and what is known as genre fiction. Where do you decide to spend your time? Where do you decide to put the work in? Where do you decide to use your words? And here, in a place where Stephen King would normally use some words, I think, maybe you've got examples to prove me wrong, but it's just in the back of my head, it seems like that's where Stephen King would normally spend some words. He is on the more literary end of horror fiction whenever we get to those discussions. He just zips right past it, zooms right through it. And I keep wanting to say lazy. But every time I say lazy, I'm not sure if that's it. Maybe Stephen King is uncomfortable. If it is discomfort instead of laziness, he's going to spend his words where he has comfort. Where he has comfort is in the dynamics between characters that we know. He spent all of that time working up the dynamic between Bowditch and Charlie. He's comfortable with that. He wrote a whole novel, Misery, basically about that type of situation, not dynamic, but situation between characters. And then here we are, and it's just sort of like we're stepping out of the horror genre, it feels like so far, into the fantasy genre. Okay. But he's picking very weird places to be uncomfortable as a writer. That's all I have for this discussion. We'll be back Wednesday with chapter 13. But we will also be back tomorrow with a short story discussion of The Telltale Heart. We'll be back on Friday with The Mask of the Red Death's opening paragraph. And we'll have some stuff in between. We are going to have a video every day between now and Halloween. And I hope to have you back for all of them.